This video is brought to you by Private Internet Access. Start surfing a safer internet and protecting your private information right now by going to privateinternetaccess.com/entertaintheelk.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock.
The Halloween franchise stands atop the horror genre with other giants like Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Scream. The name Michael Myers, his expressionless mask, and the haunting score are all iconic and have remained relevant in pop culture for well over 40 years. But just like Michael Myers himself, the franchise has had many deaths and resurrections over the years. So let's make our way through all the films, except for the 2 Rob Zombie remakes, examining the highest highs and lowest lows, and try to pinpoint the day Halloween died. What else is there to say that hasn't already been said a million times before and by more eloquent writers about the original Halloween? It's an undeniable classic, redefining the slasher subgenre after films like Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and creating a template for modern horror that's influenced countless films after it. You could say that the initial idea for Halloween began in the late 60s when John Carpenter was in film school at the University of Southern California. It's there that he made the short film Captain Voyeur, a film about a computer worker who spends the evening dressed in a mask, underwear, and a cape, peering into neighbors' windows as they're at their most intimate. Now, there isn't much overlap between the plot of Captain Voyeur and Halloween, but even in Halloween's opening scene, you can see that there's a clear fixation with voyeurism, either in the form of watching other people engage in sexual activities, or enjoying seeing the pain and distress of others. There's also an overlap in stylistic choice from the mask, POV shots peering in through windows, and the sound of heavy breathing that happens throughout the film. It's Michael's heavy breathing that we hear at the very end of the first movie, leaving the audience in a sense of dread because we know that the boogeyman is still out there somewhere, lurking in the shadows. There's something deeply unsettling about Michael's unstoppable presence. It reminds me of the truck in Duel or the Terminator in Terminator.
It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity, or remorse, or fear. And it absolutely will not stop until you are dead.
But I think it mostly reminds me of the monster in It Follows. A faceless, emotionless killer slowly stalking its prey. A force of nature that just keeps on coming. And though this changes in future movies, in the original Halloween, there doesn't appear to be any reason for Michael's actions. The characters don't know what he wants or why he's doing what he's doing. He's just a killing machine. That simplicity really works in the original film. Without any reason, motivation, or even a face, Michael becomes this embodiment of pure evil. There's a simplicity in Halloween that works so well. Michael Myers never runs or shouts or shows any emotion. That would make him too human. Instead, he slowly and silently walks. That's probably the biggest difference between Halloween and the future installments. The original Halloween is surprisingly tame when it comes to things like gore, language, and nudity. What Carpenter chose to focus on instead was the tension and dread found in the anticipation, the slow build-up that keeps the audience in suspense. It's these elements that made Halloween so special. After its release and thundering success, producers Irwin Yablans and Mustafa Akkad wanted a sequel. John Carpenter and co-writer DEBRA Hill weren't interested, but reluctantly agreed to write the screenplay once Yablans promised to produce Carpenter's next film, The Fog, and that the Michael Myers storyline would conclude with the second installment. Halloween 2 was released in 1981, and even though it was only 3 years after the original was released, the horror landscape was completely different. Halloween sparked a slasher craze that exploded in the genre, with films like Savage Weekend, To All a Good Night, Friday the 13th, Maniac, Prom Night, He Knows You're Alone, Terror Train, Christmas Evil, New Year's Evil, Delusion, Night School, My Bloody Valentine, Final Exam, The Fun House, Bloody Moon, Graduation Day, The Burning, Happy Birthday to Me, The Prowler, Student Bodies, Hell Night, X-Ray, Nightmare, and Madman all coming out in between Halloween 1 and 2. Fearing that director Rick Rosenthal's first cut of the sequel wasn't scary enough, and wanting to appeal to slasher fans with a growing bloodlust, Carpenter re-edited the film to speed up the pacing and also reshot new gorier Michael Myers kill scenes. All subtlety and nuance of the first film was replaced with more gore and more nudity that the subgenre had become known for. Where the first film focused more on the anticipation of the kill, the second film focused more on the brutality of the kill. Another noticeable difference between the first and second movie is that Michael is given a motive for his killings. In the original, he's more of a mythical boogeyman, often referred to and credited as the Shape. But in the sequel, there's a plot twist reveal that Laurie Strode is actually Michael Myers' sister, an idea that was never initially planned by Carpenter and Hill as they wrote the original movie, but an idea that became necessary as they were coerced to write a sequel when there wasn't much story left to tell. And this core relationship between Michael and his family would become a core plotline moving forward in the series. As far as sequels in the Halloween franchise go, this is one of my favorites. Sure, it has plenty of issues throughout, like relegating Laurie's character to a bed for a majority of the movie. Film critic Roger Ebert, who actually praised the original film, also said, "The plot of Halloween 2 absolutely depends, of course, on our old friend, the idiot plot, which requires that everyone in the movie behave at all times like an idiot. That's necessary because if anyone were to use common sense, the problem would be solved and the movie would be over." In spite of all those things, I love how it picks up right where the first one left off. There's still some really strong moments of suspense, and I really appreciate the sense of closure at the end of the film with Laurie, Dr. Loomis, and Michael having their final showdown. After Halloween 2, Carpenter and Hill wanted to turn the franchise into a series of anthology films, like The Twilight Zone on a bigger scale, instead of continuing the story of Michael Myers. Because of that, the third film, Season of the Witch, has nothing to do with the two previous films. Instead, the story revolves around a small-town mask maker's plot to kill millions of children with his masks and a triggering device embedded in a television commercial. While watching the film, I was surprised by how entertaining it actually was. And Carpenter's original score for the movie is obviously fantastic. Sure, the plot is absolutely cheesy and nonsensical at times, and even though it's never really scary, there's still an underlying tension and mystery throughout that reminded me of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The scariest part of the film is probably the Silver Shamrock jingle that burrowed deep inside my brain while watching, and where it's gonna stay until I die.
Turn it off! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
Season of the Witch is a good standalone movie. Its biggest fault is that it's lumped into a Halloween franchise that demands Michael Myers in every installment. When it was released in 1982, it was met with terrible reviews, and a fan base, upset with the absence of Michael Myers, resulted in mediocre box office returns. So Carpenter and Hill's hopes of turning the franchise into an anthology series ended as soon as they began. It took another 6 years before Halloween 4 and 5 were released in back-to-back years, and then the sixth entry 6 years after that. Michael Myers was back, but Laurie Strode wasn't. Her character was killed unceremoniously off-screen in a reported car accident that gets a fleeting mention, but she leaves behind a child, Jamie. And she becomes Michael's driving force in these basically forgettable movies. All three of these movies are really just a mess. They're generic teen slashers filled with boring characters and convoluted plot lines involving telepathy, a druidic cult, and Michael raping his own niece to father a child. There are a few highlights in these three films. I liked the idea of a lynch mob hunting down Michael in The Return of Michael Myers, though that plotline ultimately went nowhere. An ageless Paul Rudd made The Curse of Michael Myers somewhat bearable. The real MVP of these three films is Donald Pleasence's Dr. Loomis. He really went all out with his scenery-chewing performance that was always captivating. He also proved to be a worthy adversary to Michael Myers, balancing him out and giving us insight into his mind and motivations. By 1995, there had been 6 Halloween, 9 Friday the 13th, and 7 Nightmare on Elm Street films. The Halloween franchise and the slasher subgenre it helped redefine seemed long dead. But that all changed just 1 year later with the release of Scream.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Halloween. You know, the one with the guy in the white mask who walks around and stalks babysitters.
And just like Halloween did in 1978, Scream revitalized and reshaped the slasher subgenre for a new generation with its irreverent, self-aware tone. The final girl, the masked killer, sex and gore were still there, but there was an added element of intertextuality. Unlike slashers that had come before, these characters had seen slasher films. They learned from them, studied them, and now were living in them. This meta, self-aware approach helped popularize an entirely new way of thinking about slashers moving forward. It also added some much-needed depth to the main characters. Not everything was 100% about the villain. The main characters had deeper issues, trauma, and pain they were processing that made them more complex and interesting. That's what made Halloween H2O stand out amongst other Halloween sequels. It was more character-driven. When we meet an older Laurie Strode, she's faked her death and is living in a new state under a new name in order to hide from Michael Myers. She's living with PTSD from what happened 20 years ago, and those fears and anxieties are driving her to alcoholism and are causing a rift between her and her son. There aren't that many kills in H2O, but it doesn't matter. Watching Laurie's character arc is much more interesting and satisfying. She begins afraid and broken, running away from Michael, but in the end, she confronts Michael even when she has a chance to escape. She fights back, seeking closure and resolution. And it was actually a really strong resolution to the Laurie Strode Michael Myers saga. Enter Halloween Resurrection, a movie that's so bad that it's almost good.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
Almost. It came out in the summer of 2001 and really serves as a time capsule to all the things that were new or popular at the time, like reality TV, online dating, and found footage shaky cam. In the opening moments of Resurrection, Laurie's character is stripped of everything that made her dynamic in H2O. Her new life is gone, and the closure she gained at the end of H2O is gone too. The movie puts her in an institution, gives her a slight glimmer of the assertive fighter we saw in H2O, but then kills her off within the first 10 minutes.
I'll see you in hell.
And there it is. That's the day, or I guess moment, that Halloween died. It's similar to my video on the day A Nightmare on Elm Street died. Dream Warriors brought back the main character from the original and resolved the central conflict once and for all. A satisfying conclusion that is then completely undone in the opening moments of Dream Master. Jamie Lee Curtis didn't want to reprise her role in the film, but her one condition for coming back was that her character be killed off for good. With Laurie dead, Michael Myers lost his purpose. There was nothing left for him to do. As mediocre as Halloween 4 through 6 were, at least there was always the driving force of Michael trying to kill his bloodline while combating Dr. Loomis. With Dr. Loomis and Laurie gone, Resurrection just became another generic slasher movie where Michael kills off boring characters that the audience never really cares about. Oh, and Busta Rhymes does Kung Fu.
Wanna with me?
I don't really have a point on that, it just needed to be mentioned. After almost 15 years and 2 standalone remakes by Rob Zombie, Halloween was getting another sequel with Jamie Lee Curtis reprising her role as Laurie. To simplify what had become a convoluted chart of timelines to keep track of which films were canon and which weren't, 2018's Halloween is a direct sequel to the original 1978 film, retconning all previous sequels. From a technical standpoint, Halloween is a beautifully made film. Michael Myers was actually scary again, with some long, drawn-out moments of silent suspense that harkens back to the original 1978 film. Director David Gordon Green plays with light and darkness in interesting ways, and uses some really long tracking shots that effectively build the anticipation. There's a simplicity to the suspense that plays out in a patient, methodical way, again reminiscent of the original film. That's a common theme throughout the 2018 version. It has so many callbacks to the original, from dialogue references to musical cues, that rewards fans of the franchise. The best part of the film, though, is Jamie Lee Curtis's performance. In the film, Laurie Strode is a doomsday prepper, completely obsessed with the idea of Michael Myers potentially coming back for her after that one fateful night in 1978. Now, as much as I enjoyed her performance, if I'm being honest, the film kind of felt like Halloween H4O, retreading on similar facets that were already explored in H2O, like PTSD, alcoholism, and a fractured family. In H2O, I also felt like Laurie's character had a more interesting arc, reminiscent of Ripley in Aliens, where she begins broken and scared of her past, but finally chooses to face her fears and bravely confront the monster that's haunted her. I really enjoyed the new dynamic of making her a doomsday prepper, but even that felt a little underwhelming at the end. It felt like they were building it up to be this hardcore Home Alone style cat and mouse fight, but it really wasn't that. However, there was still a nice rewarding twist at the end that was ultimately satisfying. I liked the newest Halloween film, but it still ultimately felt like Halloween H4O, retreading on similar topics and dynamics that had already been explored in H2O. So, for now, I have to say that Halloween died on July 12, 2002 with the release of Halloween Resurrection. The newest Halloween was a strong step in the right direction, righting a lot of the wrongs, and laying a solid foundation for the 2 sequels that are already scheduled, with David Gordon Green behind the camera and Jamie Lee Curtis in front. So, just like Michael Myers, this franchise still has plenty of opportunities to beat death one more time. This video was brought to you by Private Internet Access. Safety is always a priority, not just in slasher movies, but also when surfing the internet, because your private information should actually stay private. That's why you need to check out Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access is the leading no-log VPN service with over 1 million paying customers. They're PC Mag Editor's choice for 2020, with unlimited access to over 10,000 servers in more than 70 countries. And they make it easy with dedicated apps for each platform, including Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, Amazon Fire Stick, Linux, and more. And one subscription allows you to connect up to 10 devices simultaneously, so all your data is encrypted. Not only will you be able to browse the internet anonymously, hide your IP address, and defend yourself from hackers and data leaks, but you'll also be able to bypass geo-blocking. Geo-blocking prevents you from accessing websites or content outside your country or region. With Private Internet Access, you can choose a server in over 40 countries and unlock content you wouldn't otherwise have access to. So go to privateinternet.access.com/entertaintheelk right now in order to get 77% off a 2-year plan, with 3 extra months entirely free. They're even giving new customers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can check it out and see what they have to offer at absolutely no risk. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this journey through the Halloween franchise. If you did, please like it and leave me a comment below. Tell me the day you think Halloween died, or if you think it's still alive today. I'm already hard at work on my next video, so make sure you're subscribed below, and also click the bell. That way you're notified whenever a new video drops, and you can be sure not to miss it. Also, be sure to check out my brand new Dungeons & Dragons podcast of Mice and Men and Monsters, where D&D elements are dropped into famous pieces of literature, kind of like D&D fanfiction. I'll have a link below so you can go check it out wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks again everyone for watching, and I will see you all next time.